You ever get the feeling that the room you're sitting in suddenly isn't safe anymore, even though nothing has visibly changed? That's what it felt like the night my son squeezed my hand 3 times at the dinner table. Now, most people wouldn't notice something like that. They'd keep smiling, keep eating, keep talking about work and mortgages and the price of wine. But I spent 30 years investigating financial crimes for the Ontario Provincial Police. And the moment Nathan's fingers pressed mine, once, twice, 3 times, every alarm bell in my body went off. Because that squeeze wasn't random. It was a signal we invented when he was 7 years old. A danger signal. The dinner itself looked ordinary enough. Nathan had bought a beautiful house outside Ottawa the year before. Hardwood floors. Tall windows. One of those open-concept kitchens that makes everything smell like garlic and rosemary. Across the table sat the woman he'd introduced to me only 2 weeks earlier. Her name was Claire Marston. Elegant. Polished. The kind of person who seems professionally calm. Her voice had that smooth, confident rhythm you hear from people who give a lot of presentations. She was explaining her business again. Private wealth enhancement, she called it. Nathan nodded along while she spoke. I smiled politely and poured wine into her glass. But inside, I was studying her the way a bomb technician studies wires. Because something about her method felt wrong. She had a glossy presentation tablet open beside her plate. Graphs. Projected returns. A fund she claimed was exclusively available to a limited circle of early investors. I'd seen those exact words before. Dozens of times. Ponzi artists love the phrase limited circle. It makes people feel special. Chosen. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. 3 times. Once. Twice. 3. I didn't react. Didn't even look at him. Just lifted the wine bottle and filled his glass. But inside my chest, my heart had started beating in that slow, cold rhythm I remembered from interrogations. Because that signal meant something very specific. It meant Nathan believed he couldn't speak openly. It meant he thought someone at the table might be dangerous. And most importantly, it meant he was asking me for help. Claire kept talking. Most of our clients see a 40% return within the first year. 40%. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was familiar. 23 years earlier, I had arrested a man in Toronto who used those exact words before stealing $18 million from retirees. Claire leaned forward and smiled warmly. You know, Gordon, she said. Nathan mentioned you worked in financial investigations. Her eyes locked onto mine. Not nervous. Not defensive. Just calm. Too calm. Then she added something that made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I always enjoy meeting people who understand how money really moves. The room suddenly felt colder. Outside, the wind rattled against the tall windows. Nathan's hand slowly pulled away from mine. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Claire's tablet screen had gone dark. But for a split second before it shut off, I saw a logo. A fund name. One I had seen years earlier in a case file that ended with 3 suicides and a missing $20 million. The fund wasn't just suspicious. It was supposed to be dead. I kept smiling. Kept sipping my wine. But inside my head one thought repeated itself like a warning siren. This woman shouldn't exist. And if I was right, my son had just sat down at dinner with a ghost from one of the worst financial fraud cases I had ever worked. And ghosts like that don't show up again unless they're planning to take something. In this case, my son's entire retirement, I didn't say a word. Not yet. Because the first rule of catching predators is simple. You never let them know you've recognized them. Not until it's far too late. When you spend 30 years chasing financial predators, Kid, you develop a memory for patterns the way a hunter remembers tracks in the snow. Most people remember faces. I remember methods. And the method sitting across from me at that dinner table was one I thought had been buried a long time ago. Nathan was talking about the house renovations he planned next year, trying to keep the conversation light. But Claire's eyes kept drifting back to that tablet beside her plate, like a magician making sure the audience notices the right prop. "Gordon," she said gently, "you must have seen a lot of investment scams during your career." I wiped my mouth with my napkin and smiled. "Oh, a few." That was an understatement large enough to park a truck in. Behind the smile, my mind had already begun flipping through old case files. And one name kept floating back to the surface. The Silver Bay Capital collapse. That case had been ugly. Retirees emptied their pensions into it. Farmers mortgaged land. A school principal in Kingston lost everything and drove his car into Lake Ontario. Silver Bay promised 40% annual returns too. Exactly 40. And when the dust settled, the founder had disappeared with $20 million. No body. No arrest. Just gone. The fund died overnight. At least, it was supposed to. Claire picked up her wine glass. "You know," she continued smoothly, "people think investment fraud is about greed." She took a sip. "But it's really about fear." Nathan nodded like she'd said something profound. I noticed something else. Her left wrist. A small silver bracelet. Engraved. 3 tiny wave symbols. My pulse slowed. Because Silver Bay Capital's logo was 3 waves. Exactly like that. Nathan stood and started clearing plates. He always did that when he felt nervous. Same habit he had as a teenager. Claire watched him leave the room. And the moment he stepped into the kitchen, her smile changed. Just slightly. Warmer. Sharper. More focused. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "You recognized the logo, didn't you?" For a moment, the room went completely still. I didn't answer. Just studied her face carefully. Those eyes were calm. Confident. Not the eyes of someone afraid of being caught. The eyes of someone testing me. Finally, I said quietly, "I recognize a lot of things." Her smile widened. Then she said something that made the air feel heavy in my lungs. "Good." She tapped the dark tablet screen once with her finger. "Then you understand how valuable early entry can be." The kitchen faucet started running behind us. Nathan was washing dishes. Oblivious. Trusting. My son had always been a good man. Worked hard. Saved carefully. 35 years old and already built a respectable retirement portfolio. Exactly the kind of person predators love. Stable. Disciplined. Trusting. People like Nathan don't gamble their money. So con artists convince them they're making safe investments. Claire leaned back in her chair. "Your son has remarkable financial discipline," she said. "Not many people his age have saved that much." That sentence landed like a hammer. She shouldn't know that. Nathan had never mentioned his retirement savings tonight. Not once. Which meant she already knew. And if she knew that, she'd been studying him for longer than 2 weeks. My voice came out calm. Too calm. "How long have you been researching my son?" Her expression didn't change, but the silence stretched long enough to feel deliberate. Then she smiled again. Soft. Pleasant. Professional. "Oh, Gordon," she said. "I never research my clients." She tilted her head slightly. "I select them." At that exact moment, something slammed against the side of the house outside. Hard enough to shake the windows. Nathan called from the kitchen. "Dad?" I stood up slowly. And when I turned back toward Claire, she was watching me with a look that made the back of my neck prickle. Not fear. Not guilt. something colder, like a chess player watching the board, and realizing the other player has just noticed the trap. When you finally realize what they're doing, they're usually still smiling. Claire was smiling like that when Nathan came back into the dining room carrying a stack of plates. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Perfect," she said smoothly. I sat back down, but my appetite had disappeared. The steak on my plate might as well have been cardboard. Nathan poured himself another glass of wine. "So," he said casually, "Claire was telling me about the fund's next investment window." There it was. The pitch. Claire turned her attention to him immediately. "Yes. It opens Monday morning." Her tone had changed again, warm, encouraging, almost excited. "We only allow a handful of new investors during each cycle." Nathan looked at me briefly. Not a warning this time. More like hesitation. Claire continued. "I've reviewed Nathan's financial profile. He's exactly the kind of disciplined investor we look for." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Financial profile. That phrase again. Nathan frowned slightly. "I didn't send you my portfolio yet." Claire waved a hand lightly. "Oh, not directly. Public data tells you quite a lot these days." It was a clean answer. Too clean. Because public data does not show retirement account balances. And I knew it. I leaned back in my chair and spoke quietly. "What fund did you say you represent again?" She didn't hesitate. "Northlake Strategic Growth." Another name. Another mask. Predators change fund names the way snakes shed skin. But the structure underneath usually stays the same. 40% returns. Exclusive entry windows. Carefully selected investors. And always, always, urgency. Claire slid the tablet toward Nathan. The screen lit up. Graphs. Charts. Beautiful projections climbing like rockets. "Your current retirement fund has been performing well," she said. Nathan blinked. "You saw that?" She nodded. "Roughly $230,000, correct?" Nathan froze. The room went dead quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming. Slowly, Nathan looked at me. His eyes were wide now. Not confused. Afraid. Because he knew exactly what that meant. He had never told Claire that number. Not in conversation. Not in messages. Not anywhere. And yet, she had said it with perfect confidence. 230,000. Dead on. Nathan spoke carefully. "How would you know that?" Claire held his gaze. Still smiling. Still calm. "Let's just say, I'm very good at understanding people's financial potential." That answer would fool most people. But I spent 30 years chasing criminals who lived inside numbers. And I knew what I was hearing. Data harvesting. Identity profiling. Possibly hacked financial records. Or worse, an accomplice inside a financial institution. Nathan slowly pushed the tablet away. "Claire, that's a little unsettling." She laughed softly. "Oh, Nathan, wealth management requires information." Then she leaned forward slightly and said something that chilled the air in the room. "But information can also protect people from making mistakes." Her eyes flicked toward me. Just for a second. Then back to Nathan. "You want your father to retire comfortably someday, don't you?" Nathan nodded automatically. "Of course he did. Every good kid wants that." Claire smiled. "That's exactly why I'm offering this opportunity now." And that's when I noticed something else. Something small. But very wrong. Her tablet screen had dimmed again and reflected faintly in the glass surface. I could see a live camera window in the corner. Not recording the presentation. Recording us. My chest tightened. Because suddenly the dinner conversation didn't feel like a sales pitch anymore. It felt like surveillance. And that meant one terrifying possibility. Claire wasn't just targeting Nathan. She might have been building files on everyone around him, including me. I slowly placed my fork down and said the first honest thing of the evening. "Claire." She looked up pleasantly. "Yes, Gordon." I met her eyes. The investigator inside me fully awake now. "You remind me of someone I used to chase." For the first time all night. Her smile flickered. Just slightly. Then she asked softly, "Oh." I nodded. "Yeah." I folded my hands calmly. "A woman who disappeared after $20 million vanished." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to break glass. And Nathan whispered one quiet sentence that changed the entire night. "Dad, are you saying Claire is a criminal?" Nathan looked back and forth between us. "Claire," he said carefully. But she didn't answer him yet. Her eyes stayed on me, still smiling. Then she folded her hands neatly on the table. "Gordon," she said softly, "you spent 30 years investigating financial crimes, didn't you?" Nathan blinked. "How do you?" She raised a finger slightly. "Public record." Then she turned her head just enough to look at Nathan. "Your father had quite an impressive career." Nathan stared at her. "I never told you that." Claire shrugged lightly. "People who work with money learn to research." Then she turned back to me, and that smile sharpened again. "You're good," she said, "but you're about 10 years late." Nathan pushed his chair back slightly. "Okay, what the hell is going on?" Neither of us answered immediately. The tension in the room had thickened like fog. Claire leaned back and crossed her legs, perfectly relaxed, like she owned the room. Then she tapped the tablet again. The screen lit up, but this time it wasn't charts. It was a dashboard. Numbers, profiles, data points, and right at the top, Nathan's name. Nathan stood up. "Is that my information?" Claire tilted the screen slightly so he could see it. "Yes." "How did you get that?" She smiled. "The same way every financial institution does." Nathan shook his head. "No. Banks don't just hand out retirement account balances." Claire's smile didn't move. "No," she agreed. "They don't." She paused, then added quietly, "But people who work at banks sometimes do." The words sat in the air like a dropped knife. I felt the weight of them immediately. Insider access. That explained the precision. $230,000. Exact. No guesswork. Nathan looked sick. "You hacked my bank?" Claire laughed again. "Oh, Nathan, hacking is messy." She tapped the screen again. A new window appeared. Names. Hundreds of them. Investors. Account balances. Projected contributions. And next to each one, a column labeled conversion probability. Nathan whispered, "What is this?" Claire answered calmly, "My pipeline." That was when I understood something deeply unsettling. Nathan wasn't her only target. He was just one entry on a very long list. Teachers, engineers, small business owners, mostly people between 30 and 50, responsible savers, the exact demographic that spends decades building retirement funds, the exact demographic that doesn't recover easily from fraud. Nathan backed away from the table. "You're stealing from people." Claire sighed slightly. "No." She tilted the screen again. "I'm redistributing confidence." Nathan stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "What does that even mean?" She smiled softly. "It means people trust systems that don't protect them." Her finger moved down the list of investors. "They trust banks." Tap. "They trust retirement funds." Tap. "They trust advisors." Tap. "And eventually, They trust me. I spoke quietly. And then the money disappears. Claire turned to me. Eventually. Nathan's voice cracked slightly. You are going to take my savings. Claire met his eyes calmly. I was offering you a life-changing opportunity. Nathan shook his head. That's not what this is. She didn't argue. Instead, she simply said, You haven't even heard the return projections yet. And that's when something strange happened. Nathan looked at me. Really looked at me. And I saw something in his expression that made my stomach tighten. Because the fear in his eyes was starting to mix with temptation. That's the terrifying thing about good financial predators. They don't just steal money. They build a story so convincing that victims want to believe it, even when every alarm bell is screaming. Nathan sat down slowly again, his voice quieter now. How much do your investors usually put in? Claire answered without hesitation. Between 200 and 500,000. Nathan swallowed. That's everything I have. Claire nodded. Yes. The room fell silent again. Outside, the wind scraped branches across the siding. And for the first time all night, Claire's eyes flicked briefly toward the window. Just a quick glance. But it told me something. Something that made the investigator inside me stand up completely. Because predators don't check windows unless they're expecting something. Or someone. And that's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I looked down. Unknown number. But the message preview was only 3 words. She found you. Nathan noticed my expression. Dad? I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Probably spam. I said calmly. But it wasn't. Because people who send messages like that don't make mistakes. And the phrase itself bothered me. Not, I found you. Not, we found you. But she found you. Which meant whoever sent it was talking about Claire. Across the table, Claire watched me carefully. That polite smile still resting on her lips. But something had changed in her eyes. A tiny shift. Like she was studying my reaction to something she couldn't see. Or maybe, something she already knew about. Nathan spoke again. So what happens if someone invests? Claire's attention snapped back to him instantly. The fund is pooled, she explained. Initial investments are locked for 90 days while capital is deployed. Nathan nodded slowly. And after 90 days, returns begin to distribute. 40%. The same number again. Always the same number. Predators love consistency. It makes lies easier to believe. But my attention had moved somewhere else. Because something outside the house had just made a faint sound. A soft crunch. Like gravel under a shoe. The sound was almost nothing. Most people wouldn't have heard it over the refrigerator hum. But investigators spend years learning to hear the wrong sounds in quiet places. And that one was wrong. I stood up slowly. Nathan looked at me. You all right? Just stretching my legs. Claire watched me the whole time. That same polite expression. But now there was curiosity in it. Maybe even anticipation. I walked toward the window. The wind was rattling the branches of the maple tree in the yard. Streetlights cast long shadows across the snow. Everything looked normal. Until I saw the footprints. Fresh ones. Leading across the lawn. My stomach tightened. Because they didn't lead away from the house. They led toward it. Right up to the side window. Someone had been standing there. Close enough to look inside. Close enough to hear us. And the worst part? Those footprints were still sharp. Which meant whoever made them had left only moments ago. Behind me, Nathan said, Dad, what is it? I didn't answer right away. I was staring at the edge of the yard. Because something moved there. Just a shadow at first. Then the faint shape of a person slipping behind the neighbor's fence. Gone in 2 seconds. Nathan stood up. What are you looking at? I turned back slowly. Nothing. But Claire's eyes had narrowed. Just slightly. The first real crack in her calm all night. Then she asked a question that made the hair rise on my neck. Did you see someone? Nathan frowned. What? Claire's gaze stayed fixed on me. Outside. The room went silent again. I realized something chilling in that moment. She hadn't turned to look out the window. She had simply assumed someone was there. I smiled politely. Just the wind. Claire studied my face for a few seconds longer. Then that calm smile returned. Of course. But something about the way she said it felt wrong. Too quick. Too careful. Like someone covering a mistake. Nathan sat back down slowly. This whole conversation is getting weird. Claire chuckled softly. Investment discussions often make people nervous. Nathan shook his head. No, that's not it. He looked at me again. Dad, you've been acting strange all night. I held his gaze. Because now I had to decide something. Whether to tell him the truth. Or wait. Investigators learn patience the hard way. Sometimes revealing information too early ruins everything. Claire lifted her wine glass again. You know, she said lightly, fear is what stops most people from becoming wealthy. Nathan looked at her. Fear of what? Her eyes flicked toward me again. Then back to him. Fear of the unknown. And right then my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Another message. I looked down slowly. And this time, the words made my blood run cold. He's still outside. My phone was still in my hand when the second message appeared. He's still outside. I didn't show it to Nathan. Not yet. But my pulse had slowed into that old investigative rhythm again. Because now the situation had moved past suspicion. Someone was watching the house. And someone else wanted me to know about it. Across the table, Claire swirled the wine in her glass like nothing unusual was happening. You seem distracted, Gordon, she said. Nathan looked at me again. Dad? I slid the phone back into my pocket. Just work habits, I said. Claire smiled. Old instincts die hard. That sentence lingered in the air longer than it should have. Nathan leaned forward. Okay, let's just pause for a second. He rubbed his forehead. Claire, you know exactly how much money I have saved. Yes. And my dad thinks your investment fund might be a scam. She tilted her head slightly. That's one interpretation. Nathan exhaled slowly. And now he thinks someone is outside the house. Claire glanced toward the window. But only for a moment. Then she shrugged. Houses make noises. I stood again. Excuse me. Nathan sighed. Dad. But I was already walking toward the hallway. Toward the back door. Because I needed to see something for myself. The hallway lights were dim. The house felt strangely quiet. Like the entire place was holding its breath. When I reached the door, I turned off the kitchen light first. That way whoever was outside wouldn't see me open it. Old habit. Observation before exposure. I opened the door slowly. Cold air rushed in immediately. The yard was silent. Snow covered everything in that pale blue glow you get from streetlights at night. At first I saw nothing. Then I saw the footprints again. More of them now. Fresh ones. And they didn't just stop at the window. They circled the side of the house. Like someone had been walking around it. Studying it. My chest tightened. Because criminals casing houses don't usually watch dinner conversations. Unless they're waiting for something specific. Then I heard a sound. A quiet shuffle. Behind the garage. Someone moving. Hello? I called. No answer. Just wind. Then another step. A figure emerged slowly from behind the garage wall. Tall. wearing a dark winter coat, a knit cap pulled low. For a second I thought he might run, but he didn't. He just stood there, watching me. The distance between us was maybe 30 feet, but I could see something strange immediately. The man wasn't nervous. He wasn't hiding. He looked relieved. "Can I help you?" I asked. He stepped forward carefully, his boots crunching softly in the snow. Then he spoke in a low voice. "You're Gordon Whitfield." Not a question. A statement. "Yes." He nodded once. "Good." Then he glanced toward the house and asked the question that made my stomach twist. "Is she still inside?" I didn't answer right away, because now I understood something terrifying. This man hadn't been spying on us. He had been watching her. "Who are you?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. The cold air fogged around his face. Then he said 3 words that turned my blood cold. "I lost everything." Before I could ask anything else, the back door behind me opened. Nathan's voice came out into the night. "Dad, what's going on?" The man's expression changed instantly. Panic flashed across his face. And then he whispered something urgent. "Don't trust her." The next second, Claire's voice floated from inside the house. Calm, smooth, and suddenly much closer than it should have been. "Gordon, who are you talking to?" Behind me the back door creaked open wider. Nathan stepped out onto the porch. "Dad, who was that?" His breath fogged in the cold air. I didn't answer immediately, because Claire had stepped into the doorway behind him, and she was watching the yard with a look that was very different from the woman who had been calmly selling investment opportunities 15 minutes earlier. This look was sharp, focused, almost irritated. "Did someone run away?" she asked. Nathan turned to her. "Yeah. Dad was talking to some guy." Her eyes moved slowly across the yard, studying the footprints. Then they landed on me. And for the first time that night, the smile was completely gone. "Gordon," she said quietly. "Who was that?" The question sounded casual, but the tension underneath it was unmistakable. I shrugged lightly. "Some guy who said he lost money." Nathan blinked. "What?" I kept my voice calm. "He said he lost everything." Nathan's face went pale, but Claire didn't react the way a normal person would. She didn't ask for details. She didn't look surprised. Instead, she sighed. A long, tired exhale, like someone hearing about an old problem returning. "Oh," she said softly. "That must be Daniel." Nathan frowned. "Who's Daniel?" She leaned against the doorframe. "Someone who struggles with accepting responsibility for his financial decisions." That sentence came out perfectly polished, like something she had said before, many times. I studied her carefully. "Daniel seems pretty afraid of you." She laughed lightly. "People often fear the person who tells them the truth." Nathan shook his head. "Okay, this is getting ridiculous." He pointed at the yard. "A guy just ran away from our house." Then he pointed at Claire. "You know him." Then he pointed at me. "And Dad thinks you're running some kind of scam." Nathan ran both hands through his hair. "Someone please explain what the hell is happening." For a moment nobody spoke. The wind scraped across the snow again. Branches creaked. The neighborhood was otherwise completely silent. Then Claire straightened slowly, and the calm confidence returned to her face. But this time, there was something colder underneath it. "Nathan," she said gently, "your father spent his career investigating fraud." "Yes." "Which means he spent most of his life surrounded by liars." Nathan nodded slowly. Claire smiled. "And when someone spends that long around liars," she tilted her head slightly, They eventually start seeing lies everywhere. Nathan looked at me. His expression was conflicted. I could see the war happening inside his head. Trust his father, or trust the woman who had been charming, intelligent, and confident since the moment they met. That's the real danger of predators like Claire. They don't just steal money. They create doubt. They isolate their targets. And once the victim starts questioning the people who love them, the scam is already halfway finished. Nathan turned to me. Dad, are you sure about this? I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could say a word, Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out casually, glanced at the screen, and for the briefest second, her composure cracked. Just a flicker, but I saw it. Fear. Real fear. She turned the screen away quickly. Too quickly. Then slipped the phone back into her coat. Nathan noticed. What was that? Claire forced a small smile. Nothing important. But the damage was already done, because investigators learned to recognize fear faster than anything else. And Claire had just shown a flash of it, which meant one thing. Someone out there was scaring her. Nathan crossed his arms. Okay, I'm done with the mystery stuff. He pointed toward the house. We're going inside. Then he looked at both of us. And someone is going to start telling the truth. We went back inside. Nathan closed the door behind us harder than necessary. The sound echoed through the kitchen. Nobody spoke for a moment. Claire removed her coat slowly and draped it over the back of the chair like nothing unusual had happened. But the tension in the room had changed. Nathan felt it. I felt it. And Claire definitely felt it. Nathan leaned against the counter. All right, he said. Let's try this again. He looked at Claire first. You know the guy outside? Yes. You knew his name? Yes. And he says he lost everything. Claire nodded once. That happens when people make poor financial decisions. Nathan's jaw tightened. So you did take his money? No, she said calmly. I offered him an opportunity. Nathan pointed toward the dining table. That's the exact same language you used about my savings. Claire shrugged. It's accurate. I walked back to the table slowly. Claire's tablet was still sitting there. The screen had dimmed again, but it hadn't locked, which meant the dashboard was still open. The investor list. I tapped the screen lightly. It brightened instantly. Nathan stepped closer. What is that? Claire answered before I could. Client analytics. Nathan stared at the screen. There were hundreds of names. Account values. Risk scores. Conversion probabilities. Nathan's voice dropped. These are real people. Claire nodded. Yes. Nathan scrolled. Teacher. Mechanic. Dentist. Small business owner. Every profile showed the same pattern. Savings accounts. Retirement funds. Usually between $150,000 and $500,000. Life savings. Nathan stopped scrolling. Wait. He pointed at one profile. Look at this. Name, Daniel Mercer. Investment, $310,000. Status, closed, loss. Nathan looked up slowly. That's the guy outside. The room went quiet again. Nathan looked at Claire. You took $300,000 from him. Claire's voice stayed calm. Daniel invested willingly. And then lost everything. That's what happens when markets move unexpectedly. Nathan shook his head. No. He pointed at the tablet again. There are dozens of these. Closed loss. Closed loss. Closed loss. One after another. I scrolled further. And something else appeared. A column labeled Recovery Risk. Next to several names were small red flags. Nathan frowned. What does that mean? Claire didn't answer immediately, so I did. It means the victims might try to get their money back. Nathan turned slowly toward her. Victims? Claire sighed. You're using very emotional language. Nathan slammed his hand on the table. People lost their life savings. Claire looked genuinely irritated now. Investments carry risk. Nathan pointed toward the door. That guy outside said he lost everything. Claire met his eyes. And he did. Then she added something that made the room feel colder. But Daniel also signed every document willingly. Nathan looked at me again. Dad, this is fraud, right? I answered quietly. Yes. Claire didn't deny it. Instead, she leaned forward slightly and said something that made the situation far more frightening. You're both misunderstanding the structure. Nathan blinked. What structure? She tapped the tablet again. The dashboard changed. Another screen appeared. A network map. Lines connecting investors. Funds. Accounts. Dozens of nodes. Nathan whispered. What the hell is that? Claire smiled faintly. The system. I studied the screen carefully, because suddenly the scale became clear. This wasn't one fake investment fund. It was dozens. Different names. Different banks. Different shell companies. All moving money between each other. A maze. Designed to make tracing funds almost impossible. Nathan looked up slowly. How much money is in this? Claire thought about it for a moment, then answered casually. Roughly 80 million. Nathan staggered backward. 80. He couldn't even finish the sentence. And that's when my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. I opened it slowly. 3 words again. She knows now. Before I could process that, Claire's tablet screen changed again. An alert window popped up. Red. Urgent. Claire looked down at it. And this time the fear on her face wasn't subtle. It was real. Nathan saw it too. What is that? Claire didn't answer, because whatever she was reading had just destroyed the calm confidence she'd been wearing all night. She looked up at me, then at Nathan, and whispered something I'll never forget. They're already here. 3 car doors slammed outside. Then another. Nathan turned toward the window. What was that? Claire was already standing. The tablet was in her hands now. Her calm, polished mask had cracked completely. She looked hunted. Claire? Nathan said. She ignored him. Instead, she walked quickly to the window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to look out. Then she whispered something under her breath. A single word. Damn. Nathan moved toward her. What's going on? She stepped back from the window. They found me faster than I expected. Nathan stared. Who found you? Claire didn't answer. Instead, she turned to me. Her eyes sharp now. Focused. Gordon, you need to listen carefully. That was the first time all night she had sounded genuinely serious. Before I could respond, another sound came from outside. Heavy footsteps in the snow. More than one person. Moving quickly. Nathan looked toward the door. Are those police? Claire shook her head. No. Then she said something that made Nathan's face drain of color. They're investors. Nathan blinked. What? Claire spoke quickly now. The kind of investors who don't file lawsuits when they lose money. My stomach tightened, because I had investigated cases like that before. And when millions disappear from the wrong people, lawyers are rarely involved. Nathan's voice dropped to a whisper. You mean criminals? Claire nodded once. Yes. A fist slammed against the front door. Hard. The sound echoed through the house. Nathan jumped. Another slam followed. Even harder. A voice shouted from outside. "Claire, we know you're in there." Nathan looked at her. "You brought them here?" "I didn't bring them," she said. "They tracked the accounts." The man outside pounded the door again. This time the wood creaked. "Open the damn door." Nathan backed away slowly. "Oh my God." Claire grabbed her coat. "We don't have much time." Nathan stared at her. "You're leaving?" She looked directly at him. "You should leave too." Another voice outside now. Angrier. "Kick it." Something heavy struck the door. The frame shuddered. Nathan turned to me. "Dad, what do we do?" I answered quietly. "We stay calm." But inside my mind calculations were already racing. Multiple men. Likely armed. Angry. Looking for $80 million. Claire moved toward the back hallway. Nathan stepped in front of her. "Wait." She stopped. Nathan's voice shook. "You almost took my entire retirement." She met his eyes. "I was offering you a chance to multiply it." Nathan laughed bitterly. "You're insane." Another crash hit the door. The hinges screamed. They were seconds away from breaking it. Claire looked at me one last time. Something like respect flickered across her face. "You were right about one thing, Gordon." I didn't respond. She continued. "I underestimated you." Nathan shouted. "Stop talking and help us." But Claire was already moving toward the back door. And just as the front door finally splintered open, Claire disappeared into the darkness behind the house. 3 men stormed into the hallway. Big men. Heavy coats. Faces full of rage. One of them looked around the room and shouted, "Where is she?" Nathan froze. I stepped forward slowly. The investigator in me already working again. Because sometimes the only way to survive a dangerous situation is to give people exactly what they think they want. I raised my hands calmly and said the first thing that came to mind. "She just ran out the back." The men turned instantly. 2 of them bolted through the kitchen. The third one stopped, looked directly at me, then at Nathan, and asked the question that made the entire night even more terrifying. "You 2 invest with her too?" 3 men stood in the hallway, snow still clinging to their boots, faces red with cold and anger. They weren't amateurs. You could tell by the way they moved, quick eyes, scanning the room, already calculating exits. The biggest one stepped forward. "You 2 invest with her too?" Nathan looked like he'd been hit by a truck. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. So I answered instead. "No." The man studied my face. "You lying?" "No." I kept my voice steady. "She tried to pitch him tonight." Nathan nodded quickly. "Yeah. I didn't give her anything." The man's eyes moved between us for a long second. Then he cursed under his breath. "Damn it." From the kitchen, we heard the back door slam again. The 2 other men came back inside. "She's gone," one of them said. The big one clenched his jaw. "Of course she is." For a moment nobody spoke. Then the man looked at the tablet on the table. He walked over slowly, picked it up, scrolled. His face darkened. 8 million, he muttered. Another man leaned over his shoulder. "That's just one account." The first man looked at me again. "You know who she really is?" I nodded once. "A professional fraud artist." He gave a short laugh. "Yeah." Then he said something that stuck with me. "She just made the mistake of stealing from the wrong people." A few minutes later they were gone. Just like that. Back into the night. No police. No threats. Just quiet footsteps fading down the street. The house felt empty again. Nathan sank into a chair. His hands were shaking now. Dad. He looked at the tablet still glowing on the table. I almost gave her everything. I nodded slowly. Yes. He ran his hands over his face. How did I not see it? Kid, that's the question every victim asks. And the answer is always the same. Because the best scammers don't look like criminals. They look like opportunity. Nathan looked up at me. What happens now? I thought about the man in the snow. Daniel Mercer. $300,000 gone. A life's work erased. Then I looked at the long list of names on the tablet. Teachers. Engineers. Families. All people who had trusted someone they shouldn't have. I closed the tablet. Now we report everything. Nathan nodded slowly. And Claire? I stepped toward the window. The yard was empty again. Only the footprints remained in the snow, leading away into darkness. She'll disappear, I said quietly. People like her always do. Nathan sat silently for a long time. Finally, he asked the question every family should ask before investing money. How do you stop something like this from happening? Kid. I leaned against the counter and told him the 3 rules I spent my career trying to teach people. 3 simple things every family needs to remember before trusting anyone with their savings. Rule 1. If someone promises returns that sound extraordinary, they're lying. Real investments grow slowly. 40% returns aren't investing. They're bait. Rule 2. Never invest in something you can't independently verify. Licenses, registrations, regulators. If the person asking for money gets nervous when you check those things, walk away. Rule 3, and this one is the most important. Never make financial decisions alone. Scammers isolate people. They create urgency. They push you to act before you talk to family. Because the moment another set of eyes looks at the deal, the illusion usually falls apart. Nathan nodded slowly, the weight of what almost happened still hanging over him. You saved me tonight. I shook my head. No. Then I smiled a little. You saved yourself. Nathan frowned. How? I held up my hand. 3 fingers. You squeezed my hand. That little signal we invented when he was 7 years old. A simple way to say, something doesn't feel right. And kid, sometimes that instinct is the most valuable investment protection you'll ever have. Because money can be replaced. But trust, once it's stolen, is a lot harder to get back.